ability to create in consciousness. And rightly, that is the starting point for all our creation. We create in consciousness before we create in form. That honors the creative process. We create the heaven and then the earth. But because most people's consciousness has been so coarse, most of their creations, even to solve problems, only produce more misery. Most people try to solve problems at the intellectual level, thinking up solutions. But that usually just creates more problems. So I want to share something on this topic from another mentor of mine, Alan Hammond. I will summarize some of his points so it's easier to translate, but I will quote others.
또 다른 것도 인용을 해서 말씀드리도록 하겠습니다.
And I'll mention when it's a direct quote.
이게 이제 직접 인용이면은 제가 그것을 언급하도록 하겠습니다.
So we can't create something out of nothing. There's always some substance to start with. For example, if starts to create a world, there must be a starting substance. And we call that vibrational substance. You know that everything essentially is vibration. But our human abilities only allow us to perceive a really quite narrow band of all the substance that exists. So to quote Alan, there is plenty of coarse stuff around. What has been absent is the finer substance that is generated through human beings, primarily through their consciousness. And that finer substance he's referring to, we call pneumoplasm. He uses that term pneumoplasm too, but in this context, he spoke of it as finer substance. Okay, quote, first, finer substance has to be generated. And the first thing that happens in that finer substance is that new instruments, new mechanisms begin to reappear. They are already there in spirit, but need a particular quality of substance in which to reappear. So, to explain, that particular quality of substance that he's referring to is finer ranges of pneumoplasm. Do you remember that there are many levels of pneumoplasm? There's as much variety in pneumoplasm as there is in the visible world. Okay, then Alan refers to divine technology. Quote, divine technology is here. How it may be coordinated and utilized to implement divine purposes requires a certain connecting substance for which we are responsible. So the generation of fine substance is the crucial thing. This begins to allow a more factual connection for us with cosmic mind and cosmic machinery. Still his quote, human beings are trying to solve their problems at the intellectual level. That is not the way to do it. That's still sweat of the brow. So this term, sweat of the brow, is referring to the story in the Garden of Eden in the Bible. In essence, what it means, that story, because mankind lost connection with finer ranges of substance, he could only create through hard work, struggle. Hard work and struggle. Many thousands of years have passed since that story was told and later written. Don't we still see and even experience a lot of hard work and struggle? We also use the term divine design as a code to restore our right relationship with God. Because human beings were supposed to rest in God, but we were supposed to rest in this larger wisdom and power. And to continue creation from that place of ease and wisdom, with God's power working through us. But because mankind's consciousness has fallen to such coarse levels, we don't see much of that, do we? So, the divine design working on the planet now is seeking to restore that natural and true design. Is that clear? Okay, so in other words, many of the changes that we see happening underneath are actually heaven's divine design working to change everything back to their natural design.
네,
Actually, we could take a week-long seminar just on that point. So, how does that relate to us? Instead of struggling to create and generally producing more problems through what we think of are our solutions, because our solutions are not aligned with universal power. Instead of that struggle, we can instead consciously let the divine design emerge through every aspect of our living. And we could have a week-long seminar about how to do that. So something that's important to realize, if designs are untrue, they always, 항상, disintegrate. Because that's the operation of the one law, which is the movement of life itself. So, much better to let the more true designs emerge. Okay, back to Alan. I really love this quote. When we are an integral part of cosmic mind, we don't have to try to do anything. Wow. Wow. We don't have to try to do anything? Going back to his quote, all we have to do is to move with what cosmic mind is already doing. Doesn't that sound a lot easier? So in this chapter by Alan, he also speaks about how this relates to attunement. Earlier I said, you cannot create anything out of nothing. There is always a starting material. At the human level, that starting material is fine substance, pneumoplasm, because that pneumoplasm allows us to perceive more deeply and also to receive inspiration. That's why attunement is so precious to me, because through attunement we can generate very fine levels of pneumoplasm. Without that fine substance, our perception is limited to just physical and mental emotional levels. That means that all we have left is physical and mental emotional. So the only way we can create with just those two levels is struggle and sweat of the brow. I want to give an example of this. It's my perception. It may go against what you have thought for your whole life. The example I want to name is what is really quite a standard approach called visioning in meetings. My experience is that is not how inspiration and vision comes. Vision, inspiration comes through the fine substance of our hearts and minds yielded to heaven. So that yielded heart and mind to heaven, when do you experience that? Probably often when you're alone in meditation and prayer. Maybe when you read, watch, or listen to something that inspires you because it's so deeply true. Hopefully also in our services and seminars, you can remember times when the hearts and minds were so yielded and open that a powerful inspiration came through you. And vision can come when a few people gather together when they're very conscious of generating fine pneumoplasm. I have rarely seen that in a meeting. People put on their corporate hats and take notes and brainstorm and so forth. Flat. So if we follow the process of actually receiving vision, later in a meeting, if there is a right atmosphere, we can share the vision. And then people can discuss it, perhaps even improve upon the design. I've experienced that. So actually this is what we teach in the creative process. Vision of direction and design comes in the water cycle, not in the air cycle. In the air cycle, we have meetings to build agreement with other people. So to conclude, when we honor the divine design, we can connect with cosmic mind through the fine pneumoplasm that we generate. And we can discover answers and direction at each step. The divine design comes through pneumoplasm. In other words, pneumoplasm itself contains the direction and design for what we need to do to fulfill our creative purpose at every level. So to me, that's an exciting way we could begin to explore more. There's a huge momentum in society that says, are you kidding? You gotta be crazy. Or maybe that says, oh, that works fine in heaven, but not on earth. To me, it really comes down to a simple choice. Do I want to repeat the approach that for thousands of years has proven to me only produces struggle and misery? Or do I want to dare to try a new way that is based in nature, that is based in the universe, that is based in the truth? And probably all of you are thinking, well, yeah, but how do I know that I'm really following the divine design? 진짜 좋은 질문이에요. That's a very good question. But one way you may know, are you struggling? Doesn't mean there won't be pressure, but there's a difference between pressure and struggle. Are you giving priority to generating fine substance? Are you accessing cosmic mind for your choices? Many times we get it wrong, but every time when we look again and ask, what's needed now? When we yield our hearts and minds to heaven, asking that question, the answer always comes. So, that's what I'm interested to do. 감사합니다.